you can take it away.
Thanks very much. You're all very welcome along. I love that we're live. And yeah, I've always wanted to say this, please don't curse. You're very welcome along. I hope you enjoyed today. I was dipping in and out. I was lucky enough to be dipping in and out from home. And it's great to hear all the different voices. When I was asked to chair the capstone, I was honored, to be honest, because serious case of really could you not get anybody better than me to chair this seriously, people? So look, let's kick things off. The theme of the conference is reimagining learning after the pandemic. On our panel today, we have Tony O'Reilly, Orna Mulhern, Conor Power, and Yvonne Conaty. Now, could I ask each of you to just give us your name and one line about yourselves? Starting with Tony.
Hi, thanks, Hassan. Yeah, I'm also honoured to be here as well for the closing event. So Tony Riley, primary school teacher. I've been here in Ireland for the last 20 odd years, worked in post-primary and primary, and now I'm seconded with the NCCA to look at digital technology and coding in the primary school sector.
Orna Mulhern, give us a line about yourself.
Orna is my name. My background is post-primary education. I was an Irish teacher before I joined Kenya.
Where are you gone to?
Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see. Well, I can see you on the big
They're
screen.
only at the top. We're not getting there we go.
Am I there? Brill.
Wonderful.
So I was an Irish teacher, as I said, before I joined Kenya, and Kenya is a non-profit organization working to provide technology-based solutions to educators, both in the formal sector and in the non-formal sector.
Yvonne Conaty, can you give us one line about yourself, your name, where you're from?
Sure, yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Yvonne, and I'm a PTech program manager for IBM in Ireland. I'm currently on career break from my post-primary job in Colossus Lacey in Ashburn, and I work with piloting an education program for the Department of Education. And
last but not least, I mean, he really needs no introduction, but Conor Power, can you give us a one-liner there about your good self, sir?
Hey, folks. I'm an assistant principal and teacher in Conaty in Croom. I also do coding CPD with Junior Cycle for Teachers. I'm on the CESI exec here as well. And on the GEG Ireland, you'll find me as well.
So thanks very much for joining us. And I want to jump straight into this. Now, I'd love if we had the time that I could sort of do this question goes to number one, this question goes to number two. But because of time constraints, we're going to take, this question goes to number. We mute. There we go. What I'll do is I'll throw out the theme. I'll throw out my thinking on the theme, and then I'll direct the question to all of you. So the theme of the conference is reimagining learning after the pandemic. I want to put it to you all on the panel. Reimagining learning after the pandemic, is that statement true, or is it, well, we survived learning through the pandemic, which means once all of this is over, we'll go back to the way it was. So I'm going to start with Conor. Reimagined learning. How was the learning reimagined? And I'm starting with you, Conor, because you've always been online. You've been a content creator, you're a teacher. If there was something interesting, you put it up, you created a video, you put it out there. How did things change for you, or have they changed at all? Well, we survived learning through the pandemic, which means once all of this is over, we'll go back to the way it was. So I'm going to start with Conor. Reimagined.
We need to answer twice.
Was hearing my own voice in my head.
I think there's an echo somewhere.
Content creator, you're a teacher. If there was something interesting, you put it up. You could put it out there. How?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so Hassan, yeah, a very good point on survival. I mean, like you said, I've been a long proponent of online and blended learning and using the tools. And I think, it did stand schools in very good stead, where they did have a commitment to online learning and digital learning, support. you know, however, like there is definitely that survival element there as well. And I think particularly like for us, we're a deaf school as well, that, you know, and a number of reports ERSI have done recently really have shown that, you know, the inequalities in access to the technology and support from home have really been exacerbated during the pandemic, you know. And I think people were aware of that, and trying to fight hard against it. Like I know in a lot of schools, ourselves included, would have tried to supply technology to the students, you know. But, you know, that's only part of the problem, because I think looking at the studies as well, in particular at the ERSI, the technology actually wasn't the biggest issue identified. In many cases, it was actually the logistics of working from home. And I can certainly testify to this, having 3 small kids myself, you know. And you would initially, I think people are thinking, oh, tech, you know, do you have the things in place? And it's amazing actually how quickly schools were able to put in place learning platforms. And we're in a lucky phase of technology at the moment, because I mean, for a lot of people in CESI, you've been at this for years. We'd have had Windows devices, you know, and we had Moodle, and you only get so much traction with those kind of things. They have to be configured, set up, learning platforms, you know. But in recent years, you know, the advent of lower cost devices from all providers, not just like Google, but Microsoft have kind of devices that are easier to deploy and manage now as well, that every company, Apple as well. You know, the technology wasn't the hurdle it probably would have once been, if you can get your hands on it, you know. And then the broadband was the other side of it as well. So there was an element definitely of survival. And, you know, initially we were kind of saying, you know, the provision of technology has jumped on years. And I think one issue that has been identified as well in the Irish system, and I guess the plans around the digital learning planning and the digital learning framework and that have identified that, like, there's a huge disparity across schools as well, you know, in terms of if you had a management or a number of teachers who are really into technology, the experience and the added value that they can add to the students under their charge was massive, you know. But likewise, then what was useful, I think, sharing of practice, you know, that the schools that had the practice over the years, you know, really were out there helping, you know, myself, lots of people in lots of ways across social media platforms, you know, trying to make it easier.
I suppose that was that's kind of my question, Conor. And how have you reimagined learning, or have you reimagined learning as a technologist yourself? Was it a case of, okay, this is my moment to shine, I'm just going to continue as normal, or did you kick it up a notch? I personally feel you've kicked it up a notch. I believe your outreach, you're speaking to other teachers, you're training. You're very open with your information. Do you know what I mean? Like, if anybody, you can go onto the CESI list, you can go onto Twitter. There's a certain amount of openness that has grown, and I feel that has enabled an awful lot of people embrace the technology, and not so much depend on the technology, but use it to teach, again, with the creation of platforms. Orna, I want to move over to yourself. So where we are now, what we've come through, what are your, like, industry has KPI, key point indicators, like education. Some might say an exam is the education equivalent, but really as educators, you're working with students, the students learn, the students go away and they come back to you. But realizing the investment in the student's time, it's a very hard thing to do. So what are you doing? What are you going to take away from this to push forward?
Gosh, Hassan, how long do we have?
Not very long.
Yeah, no, I'm keeping on track. I suppose, to put it into context, the work that we do in Kenya, we kind of work across 2 strands. A lot of our work is directly with educators, and our model for most of our projects is train the trainer. So what I initially would have been doing pre-pandemic is upskilling teachers to use the likes of Microsoft Teams, Google Classroom, and various technology tools. And that was massively, you know, the demand massively increased once the pandemic hit. Part of our work has also now, since kind of in the last 18 months, has developed to provide literacy and numeracy intervention supports mainly for primary school students, but also for the younger post-primary school students in some cases. So internally here in the team, we very much we personally pivoted extremely easily to working from home, but we were talking to educators who were experiencing many difficulties, and we provided any supports that we could at that time. And going back to Conor's point, and I know Yvonne has mentioned this earlier in her presentation, the disparity in access to technology and access to devices was something that we are very passionate about addressing. We worked in the Tech to Students program with the Access program at Trinity College to provide that support. So that was all kind of responsiveness. What we're talking about now in our work is, I suppose there's two types of conversations we're having. We're looking at what is our model now for when we're training the trainer. So what works for teachers and educators, and when I talk about educators, I'm talking about youth workers as well, and those who would work in the non-formal education section. So what would work for them when they're receiving training from us around technology-based interventions to use with their students, but also in terms of our literacy and our numeracy interventions, which are more directed directly at the students. We have seen, for example, our literacy approach is working quite appropriately and to quite a high standard in the online intervention. So we're trying to find, we won't have a one-size-fits-all approach across all of our work, but we are trying to find, I suppose, the best approaches that have worked for us over the last 24 months.
Is there anything, Orna,
yeah.
that you've learned? Is there a particular project that you're going to run with, and in your heads you're going to go, God, that worked during the pandemic. Let's keep running with this?
Yeah, I spoke about the Reading Buddy program, and that in the short to medium term will remain on the online in the online model. But what we're looking at right now is taking our learnings from what has worked in our train the trainer supports that we offer in when we're training, what has worked in that remote setting. And we're looking at formalizing our networks. So going back to what Kate spoke about in her fantastic presentation this morning, how do we establish formal professional networks for collaboration and for professional learning? But then what I think is key for us also to look at is how do we allow for the informal professional networks to spring from that? So we're formalizing the accreditation of our courses, and we're formalizing what we're calling our online network. So that's a key piece of work for us at the moment. But I loved what Kate was talking about earlier about that formal and informal professional networks. And I think I'm inspired to go back to the office now on Monday and say, how do you formalize the informal professional networks that we can build among our educators? And what I really want to do is to have educators who are working in the non-formal sector talking to teachers and vice versa about what's working well in their sectors.
Yvonne, yesterday, I don't think I'm letting any cats out of any bags, but we had a quick chat yesterday just about how the format today was going to work, and I kind of put forward my idea of reimagining learning, or did we survive learning? Now you've seen both sides of the coin, reimagined learning, and you've seen survived. We've survived. Thank God we've survived. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so the work that I do with our schools in PTech, so just for anyone who doesn't know, it's a pilot program supporting deaf schools with pathways to further education, college, and careers. So it's more than three pathways. But in that work, when the pandemic first struck, like the schools are well equipped with technology, but for them, getting lessons out to kids wasn't the priority. It was making sure that their well-being was okay, that they had food, that that they were being checked in on and things like that. And then I was working with schools in different capacities who were organizing choirs, and they were doing the recording their songs, and the two different sides of the coin, where you have a wonderful online virtual experience in one school, and then another school who's not really worried about teaching and learning, but more concerned with the well-being of their students and how they're coping with not being in school, because the school is the one safe place for them where they are. And then you've got the whole middle ground area where schools very quickly adapted to an online environment where they utilize tools. We saw primary schools especially, and we worked with Cisco, who very kindly offered their WebEx tools to any primary school that wanted it. And then some IBMers volunteered to help train up teachers that worked in that school to use the tool and help deliver lessons in that capacity. So you had every kind of facet of it working really, really well, and just teachers being able to deliver students and students continuing to learn in that environment, to students who had absolutely zero access, and even if they did have a device, maybe the broadband didn't work, and if they were able to get the broadband worked, were in an environment where they did not want to show to the class or to anyone that that's what they were surrounded by. So it was an incredible learning curve for me, and one of the main things, like I suppose in my program, connection was key. Like, so students working with their mentors, students connecting with the learning that we wanted them to do, connecting with the people in industries that were volunteering. All of that had been live before this happened. And then with Garda safety and vetting and making sure that the right people were talking to the students, like, it took a long time for all of those other facets to kick into place. So our program just kind of vanished for a little while because we had not, it took so long for legal mechanisms and different things to kick into place. So and without the teachers on the ground, without the people, the staff in the schools, education programs like ours would never have survived, and we did just about survive.
I think it's amazing. I talk about this all the time, that I think, right, teachers went into school one day and they were told, right, this is how we're going to do things. And you went, oh, feck it. And you picked up your bags and you did it. And that's testament to the people working in schools, the teachers working in schools. It's right, let's go ahead and do this. My concern is, and by the way, teachers are kind of, I'm not just saying this because hey, I'm surrounded by teachers, but like, you have staff room, that staff room community during the pandemic, that staff room community that would belong to a school grew, became the size of the country, and the collaboration between staff room, and all of a sudden there was no concern of, how are ye dealing with that? I wonder, could we do the same? What have ye learned? So that brings me on to my next, to Tony, because so we've survived, we've reimagined. My fear is pandemic is over, we throw the mask away, and as well as the mask, we throw away all our brand new skill set that we've just spent 2 years learning. And that's a genuine fear. So what is coming? What's in way what's coming in the pipeline that will enable teachers to hold on to this brand new skill set that they've learned? Because it's a huge deal, like, and I think not enough said about it. It's they literally reimagine teaching. So Tony, I'm going to put it to you. What's in the pipeline to hold on to that?
It seems like there's quite a lot coming. Okay, so I just want to go through the system changing that's happening from reimagining teaching and learning with technology in particular. So the digital strategies for schools is in its next phase of development. So the consultation is over on that, and that'll be published shortly. You've got the STEM education implementation plan, that's in consultation and almost finished, and that will be published shortly. And then you've got the numeracy and literacy strategy, which has been around for a long time, but that's also now incorporating a digital literacy as part of it. And that hasn't been published yet, but that's coming shortly as well. So there's a hell of a lot coming down the pipeline. And then the work that I'm doing in the NCCA, we looked at the primary school curriculum and how that could be redeveloped for 21st century and moving ahead. So part of that is digital skills and the whole idea of competencies and new competencies in the curriculum, of which being a digital learner is one. So it's an overarching competency for the whole primary curriculum, and then possibly a digital technology as a curriculum subject as well. So that initiative is just, the consultation's just finished on that. We'll wait for feedback before we move on. But I'm kind of thinking this is a really good opportunity now just to pause and to listen and to look back at the experience that schools have had and ask them, because there's a lot of initiatives coming down the pipeline. So it could be a new tsunami of trying to push technology into schools. We need to pause and listen to schools, listen to teachers, listen to parents, and listen to kids, And what worked and what didn't work, I think, is going to be super important. And schools and teachers and parents and kids being part of all those processes that are coming down the line. So it could be a really good opportunity to take this time now to stop and listen to what's actually happening. And CESI is part of this today, listening to what's going on. And maybe CESI has a role in that, being the bridge between system and policy change, what's happening in schools, and pulling those two together to find out how they could both work together. Because the last thing we want is schools to be told what to do again, you know, and they'll have to find their way all over again. So it's a really good, positive time, really, if we think about it that way.
I suppose my next question I'm going to put to yourselves. Do you feel that and I suppose you kind of answered it a little bit, but I'm going to go with it anyway. Do you feel that there's going to be a cohort that will go, thank God, the pandemic is over, yay, now we're going to forget all that? How do we in schools help people not to forget about that? How do we build on what we've done? And I'll put that to, I'll put it to Conor, back to you, Conor.
Yeah, so I think, as Tony said, you know, it's important that the digital strategy for school really acknowledges that, you know, every school must make an effort to engage and ensure that the students that they're teaching can be active digital learners. You know, I mean, so much of what we're doing in adult education, further education, universities now is moving to online modalities and blended modalities. You know, that has to be that you know, there can be no longer, I think, a pass for schools that, yeah, if you have interested people and you want to use it, use it, but if you don't, you know. Now, I would never suggest, you know, because, you know, I would never suggest that technology is appropriate in every learning context, you know, but the appropriate use of it is, and certainly giving students exposure to it is. I think in terms of massive thing actually around CPD, you know, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, like you said, Hassan, a lot of people are going to be relieved. Oh, we can get back to face-to-face CPD, and we can get chatting to colleagues around the coffee machine, you know. But for other teachers who have had the opportunity, and some people had said it here earlier in discussions, that I've had the opportunity to attend a CESI conference that I normally wouldn't have, you know. So that's where this key term of kind of a hybrid, and I would love to see going forward, like adopted, you know, an effort put into education centres. You know, we mooted at the start of the CESI conference organisation that to establish hubs, you know, but I think it should be a given that every region, every education centre has spaces for group and individuals to go in and collaborate and engage in CPD. And I think if we lost that, it would be a shame. And I know it's kind of at the moment everyone's zoomed out, and you're kind of, this weekend you're in the Zoom, and like most of us here are kind of in you know, but I think, you know, okay, some people would definitely have had too much of it and want to leave it behind. But for me, I can see, you know, like that now, it suits a lot of teachers in terms of CPD and getting access to people and speakers that you wouldn't normally have access to, you know. And it's same in the classroom, like, you know, before you had guest speakers and you would mention about maybe doing it online, and it's not something they would be in the routine of. But I think the door is now open that, you know, it's proved. And it's like, you know, a lot of us over the years have been evangelical about the possibilities of technology. And now that people have been forced into it, you know, you can see, you know, going on a conference online, you know, it's not actually that difficult. I mean, you couldn't imagine pre-pandemic having 200-300 people at an online conference in Ireland in something like EdTech, given the size of the field. But now it's possible, you know. So I think that's you know, it's that notion that I think, Hassan, you're talking about what can be lost. And I think really, like, it's up to the government and the digital framework and the work of all the huge amount of the stakeholders who have been really, really engaged in this, and PDST, JCT, all the support services, to ensure that the momentum around the good stuff is kept, you know. And
so this, you mentioned two things I'm going to jump on there. So education centres, and then the stuff to be gained. So how has the role of the education centre changed through the pandemic, or how do you feel it has changed, or has it changed at all? Or will we be using more education centres? I'll put that to whoever wants to take it.
Yeah, I'll just finish this off and then hand it over. I think, you know, what's amazing at the education centers, that they have been offering courses to the areas they cover, but the people delivering the courses can be from anywhere around the country, you know. I see this kind of this truly notion, and I know the department were trying to get the idea of clustering off the ground prior to the pandemic, you know, and I it's something that hasn't really been prevalent in Irish education, and I think it's hugely beneficial to cluster and partner schools together. And like my earlier point about this is what was happening online, you know, the schools that were excelling in different areas were able to share practice really easily and effectively. And like the education centers now, they put calls out, can someone deliver a course on whatever area, and then they didn't necessarily, the geographical boundaries had evaporated, and that's going to suit some people and maybe not others, you know. You still need
I think just when you mentioned geographic boundaries there's John Heffernan just put up a comment. I taught a 12th grade AP Human Geography class based in Virginia this week from here in Ireland. I'll bring that more locally. We'll say you have a boys' school and a girls' school. The girls' school don't have a woodwork room, but the boys' school does. In my mind, all of a sudden, why can't the girls attend the boys' class from the girls' school? Or am I oversimplifying this? Is this literally straightforward? Is that what the pandemic has given us, to be able to do this?
I think woodwork's probably a bad example because you need the practical space.
Oh yeah. Well, no, hold on a minute. Project-based learning online, I think that's the next level. Watch this space, by the way. But okay, maybe French or German or Latin or Chinese. Like you could learn Chinese.
Or maybe you put the facility in place even, well, I suppose there's health and safety issues around woodwork, but this isn't exactly new either, because I remember years ago, the island schools had initiatives, and they had old school video links into schools on the mainland, I think, delivering subjects that were niche, you know, because they're tiny schools, a couple of teachers, but and that's a very good point, Hassan, because, you know, the larger schools in Ireland are able to offer a huge range of subjects, and computer science is a perfect example here as well. You know, it's such a niche subject, and the expertise isn't in the system at the moment. And one of the things I think anyone involved in teaching computer science is you'll have neighboring schools has asked nearly everyone in the different schemes. Like, I have 2 or 3 students who are absolutely passionate about computer science and they want to do it. And I think, you know, it maybe wasn't taught out sufficiently enough to provide for that. But I think going forward, like for a subject like computer science, it would be absolutely massively beneficial if that model you talk about, Hassan, could be implemented, you know, to ensure that equality of access to any student who has a passion for that subject.
We have about 3 minutes left, 3-4 minutes left. So, I mean, does anybody want to put a question to the panel? You can fire it into the chat there, as opposed to all shouting at the same time. My thinking when it came to a girls' school versus a boys' school, only because I worked in both beside each other, and one of the girls wanted to do metalwork, but she had to go to the boys' school to do it. And I know that's a practical subject, but surely now since we've reimagined education. Orna, you have your hand up.
Thanks, Hassan. Yeah, something I was thinking there as Conor was speaking, going back to your question there about will people be very happy to step away from technology? And I think where people are feeling that, it's coming from a good place. So it's important, you know, we are so passionate about what we do in this topic, and we're all here on a Saturday, a beautiful sunny Saturday, talking about this. We would hear a lot of concerns about, for example, well-being or the importance of socialization or the importance of physical activity that have been very severely impacted because of not only the initial impact of COVID, but the ongoing absences of students and teachers over the last 18 months. So it's important that we're bringing the conversation regarding the importance of technology in the ongoing, in an ongoing way, that we're meeting teachers and educators in the right place. But I think it's really important that we are very clear about the opportunities that are available for technology use in school in a way that isn't an emergency response to something that we can't control.
Okay.
So we're making really creative, exciting opportunities for teachers and educators to engage with their students in an exciting, creative way.
So is it safe that you're saying, let's not depend on technology for the sake of depending on technology? Let's not set up a system to do a thing online when all you had to do was cross the road to do it face to face.
Yeah, exactly. And like, you know, that turtle stitch that we saw, like how exciting is that? Anyone who sees that wants to do coding and embroidery with their students. Like, so it's I feel like, you know, teachers were obliged obviously to pivot to online. In many cases hadn't received the training to do so comfortably or confidently. And so they were always on a back foot, unfortunately. Probably saw the repercussions on their students as well as other COVID-related repercussions, and are trying to deal with that. So anything that is now regarding education technology for use in our classrooms or education settings, we are at a really good place now. And it's important to use our voice to say, there is so much creative opportunity we have here. Let's use it.
I couldn't agree more, Orna. I think the creativity is there. Yvonne, I'm going to leave the last word to yourself. You have your hand up there quietly.
Yeah, I was just going to push the boundaries a little bit in terms of one of the technologies that worked really well for us, and you know, kind of really engaged with the kids, was the use of the mobile phone, which I can hear the inner groans of every teacher in the country right now. But I think we might need to embrace that a little bit more, and it's something that I'm going to look at, like in my own program, and how we engage with the students and how we deliver some content to them, because it is the way they communicate. It is like every single kid that I have in my DESH schools has a mobile phone. They may not have another device, but they have a mobile, and you know, that is something that I want to keep, you know, for better or for worse. I might regret saying that in the future when I go back to the classroom, but it is, you know, I would hate to see teachers push that back, you know, and I know it can be a distraction and stuff, but I think if we teach at an early stage, like, you know, the proper usage of it and how to use it and the way to learn through it as part of our, you know, digital strategy in a school, and digital responsibility as well, in terms of the students' responsibility to keep a check on their phone. But whether we like it or not, it is what the way that they communicate most. They everything they do is through their mobile phone. You know, so
it's their environment. It's what they're used to. Tony.
Yeah, just very briefly, my wife always reckons I get the last word, so I'm going to get the last word. And right,
No,
so,
all right, yeah, here we go. Mute.
Share the big takeaway I think for me here today is to share good news stories, share stories about what works, and just to remember that teachers listen to teachers. So, you know, I think that's really important to remember that.
I'll tell you my takeaway from the entire conference and from the pandemic, 2 years of pandemic, is teachers changed from asking, is your homework done, to, is your homework done? Are you okay? I thought that is a really nice thing that teachers automatically do in the classroom anyway. And they go, are you okay? And now that's put down in text. So did you have your homework done? How did you get on last night? Are you okay? And I think that we should take something away from that. I want to say thank you to Tony Riley, Orna Mulhern, Conor Power, and Yvonne Conaty. Thank you to the CESI executive for putting together the conference. Fair play to you. And I will hand it over. So until I'm talking to you again, take care.
Salon,
Thank you
everyone.
very much, Hassan.
Thanks, Hassan.
Thank you. Wow, that was an amazing fireside chat, and I'm absolutely delighted that that's what we had to finish off the conference. It was a bit of an experiment for us this year, but I think it's one that was well chosen. So now I'm coming to the end of the day, but there's one or two things that I have to do before I go into my closing few words. So I'm going to call in Helen O'Kelly first, who's going to say one or two things.
Thank you very
It's
much.
an announcement to make, actually.
Yes, and Sarah Jane is involved here. Sarah Jane is looking at me here. So just a quick shout out to all the computer science teachers that are in the room, so to speak. We are launching this year's Leaving Cert Computer Science online table quiz. Basically, What we're going to do is Sarah Jane and I and Neil will be there as well, helping us share. There's 5 Google Forms rounds, 10 questions. So starting tomorrow for the next 5 days, we'll share those links on Slack, and then each teacher with your classes, you have until the 1st of April to submit those answers. Basically, the bottom line is the teacher has the link, your class works out the answers, and then the teacher submits. Like to really big shout out to SG Education. They are sponsoring it to €200 worth of vouchers to buy lots of goodies and hardware from sgeducation.ie. €100 for the class that comes first, €60 voucher for those who come second, and €40 for those that come third. So thank you very much, and the best luck to all the classes. Thank you.
And thank you very much for that. And then in the case of Good News Stories, Edco gave us or sponsored a hamper, and the lucky person who's got it was chosen randomly is a Michael Lynch. So I don't know if Michael is still with us, but that will be winging its way to you. I'm not too sure what's in it, but I'm sure it'll be very worthwhile. And thank you for Edco for that. Just to remind people that on the next Wednesday night, which is the night, is the AGM for CESI. It used to be held at this point in the day, but I think we've all agreed that that is kind of a non-productive session. So 8 p.m. online, and the link will go out through the CESI list. Next year, as has been mentioned a few times during the day, is our 50th. Excuse me. So we put in provisionally date for that about the 4th of March, but obviously venues and everything will dictate whether we can stick to that date, but we'll end of February, beginning of March will be the same thing. I want to give the CESI staff room a plug here. Well worth telling your friends all about it, and I've no doubt arising from today, Hassan will be contacting people to say, please, I've seen an opportunity here for a wonderful another CESI staff room. And I think that's my business end done. Let me just check the notes, make sure. Oh no, there's one more. A note, date for your diary, 14th of May, ICT and Ed in Thurles. It follows on after this conference, and it's usually a fantastic experience. So 14th of May for that. In rounding up today, I would first of all like to start out by thanking all of our presenters. Without presenters, we don't have a conference. We put out the call and people just volunteer to put themselves in the spotlight to share their wonderful stories. And my gosh, has it been a fantastic day in all regards. I'd also like to take my hat off to Katie for doing the keynote. She was the first time when I asked her, she's a little bit apprehensive, but I think she gave us so much to think about, and she set a wonderful tone for the entire day. And I really would like to thank her most sincerely for that. Hassan, I put on the spot by asking him to pull together the end of the day, the panel, and it took a bit of working out, a bit of thinking about, and I think we would all agree that it was a wonderful capstone is the word that's used, but to bring together many of the ideas that have been around today, and by 4 wonderful people. We had Yvonne, we had, and I'm going to make a bag of it here because I always do at this stage, it's just tired at the end of the day. Orna, Tony and Conor, and thank you, the 4 of you, very much for actually being put on the spot like that. That's really terrific. I want to compliment the conference committee for the work that's done. And we end up with a day like this only because people have had multiple meetings going on since about last October, if not earlier. And really the time and effort that's put in the voluntary basis, along with everything that you are already doing in terms of technology and education, is really appreciated by the entire membership. Cormac Staunton, who is there for a 2nd year behind the scenes on this online event, and everything runs smoothly. And when you think about it, there were 32 presentations altogether today. We've had 299 is the number of people who attended. And we've had 4 simultaneous breakout rooms. It is a fantastic achievement, and it's testament both to everybody who was involved in it, but particularly to Cormac, who in the background is making sure everything is running smoothly. And if there were any difficulties, was on hand for the whole day to deal with it. We had closed captioning this year. We actually had Karen Cregan, from PCR who was involved in the closed captioning. You might remember that we have had over many years in the face-to-face event that PCR have always provided us with an excellent service. And I think some of us were more fascinated to watch the whole experience of the closed captioning being done by a human being out there. It was amazing, but it adds a whole different layer to this, and it just emphasizes the whole accessibility aspect, which again was mentioned by various people during the day, and the importance that technology allows this facility and others to increase access for people across a very, very broad spectrum, and that inclusivity must be uppermost in all of our agendas, no matter where we are or what context we find ourselves in. But then, of course, there can be no conference if nobody decides to attend. You know, we can all speak, but it's not much good if we're speaking out to nobody. So a big shout out of thanks for everybody who continuously over the years attend CESI conferences, and in particular to those who are new to us. We hope that you will join us and continue with us in this community, which for me, it has been part of my just existence, and I know it's the same for everybody else. But going forward, there is so much to do, so much to build on from what has been a 2-year experiment, which in nobody's imagination could ever have happened. And it is incumbent upon all of us to make sure that all those positives can be built upon, so that technology that is so much part of the life outside of school can be made to enhance, empower, and just add to every aspect of education within school. So with that, I bring our 49 conference to an end. I thank you all very, very much. Enjoy the remainder of the weekend, and I think the sky is still blue outside. Thank you very much.